Hey guys, I'm Craig and this is Rachel, my model for today. We're here at 11 in London's Mayfair. I'm going to be doing some balayage on Rachel's hair today. As you can see, she's got an incredible tan. She's just come back from her summer holiday. So we want to bring out that tan by brightening up her hair with some Bronde balayage. So we're going to do some freehand balayage on Rachel's hair today. I use cling film in between the sections when I'm doing balayage, and I paint using a chevron technique, which I'm going to show you guys. We're going to use lightener to lift her hair. Rachel put a box colour on her hair about 9 months ago, but it fortunately didn't do any damage to the hair and didn't leave her with a regrowth. The porosity of her hair is fantastic, it's in really great condition. But I'm going to add Olaplex into my lightener formula. I've been using Olaplex now for about 4 months in the salon, and I use it in all my lightener. Rachel's hair, as I've said, is in really good condition, but obviously if we can strengthen her hair and put the bonds back into it as we're lightening it, then that's the perfect thing to do. I'm going to start off with a 20 volume formula through the underneath, and then as I work up through the top of the head, I'm going to go on to using a 30 volume. So as you can see, I've sectioned Rachel's hair off on a very slight horseshoe shaped section. I've started off by putting cling film underneath the first section of hair, which is about half an inch thick, and I've pulled the hair down onto the cling film. I've just secured the first section of cling film, the first load of cling film, with a couple of sectioning clips, so that it doesn't move. But then you tend to find that the cling film sticks to itself, so it's really, really easy to work with. So I've got my section here, and I have my lightener, which is mixed up to the consistency of a kind of runny cream cheese here. It's got Olaplex in it, so it's 20 volume lightener with 3.75 mils of Olaplex in it. And I like to use a really short, stubby tint brush to apply my balayage with. So the most important thing when you're going to freehand paint hair is the tension that you're going to use, because as you apply the lightener onto the hair, you're not actually going right the way through the section, you're just stroking the top of the hair. If you wanted a much stronger, bolder effect than this, you could use a paddle and actually work the product right the way through the section, but I want just a soft, sun-kissed effect here on Rachel's hair. So I painted one side of the section, and now I'm just going to come in and just gently stroke the top of the hair. Just working the product onto the top, and then as I get down to the ends, I'm actually going to create a chevron effect. I'm not looking for an ombre type effect here. We did a lot of ombre several years ago, but now it's really about things that look very natural. I work with a very natural aesthetic with my clients. So I've finished painting this section of Rachel's hair now, and as you can see, I've just lightly stroked the surface of the hair with the lightener, and as I work down the hair, I've gone into my chevron pattern here. Now all we do is cover up the freshly painted sections with some cling film, and the cling film sticks to the other sections underneath, and it also sticks to the hair, so it keeps everything in place. Just one more piece of cling film on the side there. Always better to make sure that the hair is well covered than not covered enough, because you don't want anything to seep into the next section. So we've done that there, and now we take down our next half-inch thick section and continue to work through the top sections. obviously when you're doing balayage yourself on your clients, it's kind of up to you how strong you want the final effect. And although I'm using a freehand technique here, you can play around with it. There's so much that you can do with it with clients. You can even get a kind of highlighted look with balayage. I'm not using as much foil on my clients anymore. I'm tending to do mainly freehand techniques because it's what people want, and it also gives you much more creativity in your work, which is great. Foils have their place and they're a great tool to use in the salon, but we've all had days where we've bashed foils in 5 clients' hair, and it gets a little bit monotonous at times. So that's my sectioning pattern there. Got my next 1/2 to 3/4 inch section, and you can almost see in Rachel's hair that she does naturally have some lighter pieces going through there. So I'm going to work with that pattern on my next section. If I'm working on thicker hair than Rachel's that's very heavily textured, then I would take the same size sections but apply slightly more lightener to each section and be a little more heavy-handed with it, because the balayage, even though it looks to us as hairdressers, because we're used to taking tiny bits of hair and putting it in a foil, it looks like we're applying a lot of lightener to her hair. But the technique, because you lift the hair right up and then you bring it back down with a toner and put colour back into the hair, it diffuses the whole effect and makes it very soft. So we need to get that lightness to begin with. And just run that colour through the ends. It really does mean that you can be as creative as you want to be, really, and no 2 clients have the same balayage, which is great. So that's our 4th section finished there, and you can really clearly see the chevron patterns, and that I've worked joining up my sections towards the end of the hair. Now, as before, we just place our thing over the top, being careful that you don't squash the lightener at all. You want to be very gentle when you're applying this over the top here. Okay, so we're working round now. I've done my first section on the hairline underneath, and I like to keep, when I'm doing a very minimal technique like this, like I'm doing on Rachel's hair, I like to keep it really fine around the very, very front of the hairline. I've got my second section here. The most important thing when you're working around the hairline is to keep a lot of tension through the hair. So you can see there that I've got a bit of tension in that section. Don't overload your brush in your lightener, and just keep that tension as you work from the hairline. It's quite important to work down from the hairline instead of trying to go upwards, because it actually makes your balayage get quite messy. So there we are, just working down from the root. Again, you're following that chevron pattern. And if you look at somebody that's been in the sun, that's perhaps had their hair pulled back whilst they've had a holiday, the hair generally gets much lighter around the very hairline area. So I always come in just a tiny bit further as I work down into my chevron, and then just lightly dust the ends. Put the hair down onto the cling film and just diffuse that line out there. So as I said before, I've just missed the very, very fine hair here at the front hairline and just worked in, just stroking that hair there. So we've worked our way up to the crown of Rachel's head now. And what I tend to do is I'll come across my sections. So there's a section from the back and a section from the front. And I basically have a chevron shaped section now that comes slightly to a V in between the two. So it's where the junction meets, and I've got hair that overlaps on the top of that section. That means that, again, you're making sure that you don't get any straight lines, and it gives you a very soft effect. Because a lot of clients will have a double crown, or if they've got long hair, their hair will part near the crown area when it goes flat. You want to make sure that these sections, although close up to the root, are really quite fine sections of hair, and that you don't paint your chevrons too thick. I've got new lightener here that's got 30 volume, and of course has Olaplex in it. I would normally use 20 volume lightener, but obviously we've upped the volume of developer because of the Olaplex in there. So exactly the same technique, but all you need to do when you're working around the crown area is just make sure that your actual painting, your freehand, is a little bit finer. So if for any reason this happens, that's happened here, where I've actually got slightly more product than I want on the hair, there's no need to panic. Just clean your brush off, take the excess product off of your brush, and then just work the lightener back into a thin line like that. And then it means it won't blob and you won't get any unsightly marks on the hair. So when you're freehand painting like this, it's worth thinking kind of outside the box, and obviously you'll make up your own techniques as you go along once you've mastered the kind of basics. As you can see from my section here, I've actually lifted the section of hair up and painted it on either side, so on the top and the bottom, and then laid it over my other sections there. So we've finished our balayage now on Rachel's hair. Just a little tip for your parting. Because Rachel wears her hair the majority of the time in a centre part, I've actually taken the parting out and left it over the top of the other sections. But in order to make the balayage look very natural and very sun-kissed, I just take the very fine baby hair at the very front of her part and just paint extremely fine sections of liner onto that. That's the very last thing that I do because it processes very quickly. And that way, when she pulls her hair back into a ponytail, you get that beautiful sun-kissed effect. So that's Rachel's balayage done. Now it's a case of processing it, and to do that I generally put it underneath a heat source for 5 minutes. Because we've included Olaplex in the formulas here, it can just take a little bit longer for the hair to lift up. And we want to lift Rachel's hair to about a base 9-10. So after 25 minutes of processing Rachel's hair, we rinsed all of the lightener, we took her over to the basin and rinsed all of the lightener out. We haven't shampooed or conditioned Rachel's hair yet because obviously using Olaplex we need to apply stage 2 once the toner comes off. I'm going to now apply Redken Shades EQ to Rachel's hair, and I've mixed up half of 6N Moroccan sand and half of 6NB brandy. I like to use Shades EQ when I'm toning balayage, whether it be blonde or in a Bronde darker shade like Rachel's hair. It gives a really high polished shine to the hair, which I don't find that I can get from anything else because it's gel based. It does give you incredible shine. So we're going to apply that over all of her hair from root to tip and then process for 15 to 20 minutes. So after 20 minutes of toning, we rinsed Rachel's hair thoroughly and applied Olaplex number 2, which we then processed for 15 minutes. We then shampooed and conditioned her hair, and I've done a very loose red carpet wave. And I think that you'll agree, it's the perfect beachy, textured sun-kissed look.